It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of Poland. Here we go. Hello and welcome again to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin and we continue Series 25 on the groups and players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Poland's players. It's actually part 2 of the players mediacast, and here we look at the selections. In part 1, we made a list of the candidates and introduced them and their likelihood of making the squad. And there is a link to that in the show notes. This episode will be divided into 2 sections. In section 1, we look over the list compiled in part 1 to see who made it and who didn't. And in section 2, we summarize surprises in the selection and review injuries. Let's begin then, and a couple of notes before we begin. Firstly, we'll look at the preliminary squad information for Poland. So they released a 29-man preliminary roster on May 29th. They made a few changes to that, actually adding 1 player to make it a 30-man squad. And then that 30-man squad was reduced to 26 players on June 7th. So we will let you know who those 4 players who were cut are, and I'll just put it in the graphics here that basically 30 players in the preliminary squad, so that required 4 players to be cut. Also a note on their warm-up games. So they played Ukraine and Turkey. In both cases, they used a 3-man back line. So 2-2-2-1 formation in the first, and a 3-5-2 formation in the second. The first game just seemed like kind of a B team game, giving the more of the bench players a bit of a run out. But the second did look more like their starting lineup. So we'll talk about that as we go through the positions. All right, now we really do begin part 1 and look at the candidates that were selected. So we begin with the manager, and the Michael Probiers was not fired before the Cup, so we'll say that he was selected. And right away with goalkeepers, we have 2 more new candidates to add to the list. So I'll just put them in the new section and talk about them later. It's Olivier Zich and Mateusz Kochalski. But let's look at the main candidates first. So Wojciech Szczesny, my tongue is getting twisted here. Wojciech Szczesny was selected for the squad. He had been our definite candidate, and we had 2 likely candidates in Lukas Skorupski and in Marcin Bulka. So those 3 selected. We didn't have any possible but unlikely candidates, but we did have 2 players added to the squad. And what actually happened is that initially Olivier Zich was selected for the preliminary squad, but he withdrew due to injury. And he was replaced on the preliminary squad by the second player, Mateusz Kochalski, there on the preliminary squad. But that's all for naught, because neither of them made it to the final squad. So Kochalski was one of the cuts from the 30-man preliminary squad. Olivier Zich, of course, withdrawing there. Okay, so moving on to defenders, and we have 2 definite candidates as central defenders. Jacob Kiwior and Jan Bednarek, both of those selected for the final squad. We didn't have any likely candidates, but we had 4 possible candidates here, the first of which was Thomas Kedziora. He was not selected even for the preliminary squad, but our second one, Paweł Dawidowicz, was selected. Third candidate, Mateusz Witeska, not selected, but Bartosz Salomon, our fourth possible candidate there, was selected. That leaves us with 4 central defenders, and it's not enough. We usually see 5 or 6 brought, and so we go down to our possible but unlikely candidates and find that 2 of them were selected. The first is Paweł Bocznowicz, and he was selected, and also Sebastian Walukowicz, also selected. However, Paweł Bocznowicz was cut, so only made the preliminary squad, didn't make the final cut there, and Sebastian Walukowicz was selected for the final squad. So 5 central defenders being brought here, and we move on to the left back position. And here we have no definite or likely candidates, just a possible candidate in Timotheus Puchas. And he was selected for the squad, for the final squad. But he's the only one. So just one left back. They seem a bit short on defenders here. Let's see about the right side. Here we had also no definite or likely candidates, just 2 possible candidates. The first of whom, mediacast, was not selected, but the second, Bartosz Berezinski, selected for the squad. So just one over here as well. A bit thin on defense, it seems, but perhaps some of the midfielders will support the defense. So we go on to the midfielders and defensive midfielders. We had just one candidate as a defensive midfielder, Peter Zielinski. He was a definite candidate and he was selected. Sorry, no, he was not a defensive midfielder. We had created a category for him, a versatile midfielder, because he kind of played all over the pitch in the games that we looked at. So we thought it was best to introduce him there. So we might see him anywhere on the field. Now we move to defensive midfielders. And in addition to the 6 candidates we had there, we have a new one. So Jacek Kulazinski, we add to the list, but we'll talk about him later. We'll talk about the more likely candidates first. So no definite candidates here, but likely candidate Jakub Piotrowski, and he was selected for the squad. And one possible candidate, Taras Romanchuk, also selected for the squad. But we had one possible candidate and 3 who were possible but seemed to be off the squad. None of those players were selected, but this new player was added. That is Jakub Kaluzinski. However, he did not make the final cut, so just selected for the preliminary squad there. On to central midfielders, where we do have another new candidate, and that is Kasper Urbanski. Hadn't made our list in the first one, and you'll soon see the reason why. But let's look at the more likely candidates here. 2 candidates at the likely level, none at the definite level here too. The first likely candidate was Bartosz Sliz, and he was selected, and so was the other one, Damian Szymanski. So both of our likely candidates there selected for the final squad. And we had 4 possible but unlikely candidates. However, one of them made it to the squad. That was Jacob Moder, selected for the final squad. And the new candidate that was added, Kasper Urbanski, also making it to the final squad. So the reason he hadn't been on our list is that he had never appeared for Poland before the 2 warm-up games. He subbed into both of them. And so let's talk a little bit about him. He's very young, just 20 years old and plays for Bologna, who had a successful season in Italy. He was with them since 2021 and with Lechia Gdansk in Poland prior to that. So Kasper Urbanski making the squad there. And 4 central midfielders in addition to the 2 defensive midfielders. So that's where a lot of their investment is going. Over to the left midfielder position, we have just one candidate here at the likely level. It's Kamil Grosicki, and he was selected for the squad. On the right, just one candidate at the possible but unlikely level who was not selected. Going upfield, we look at the, we kind of created separate category of left winger and right winger for Poland here, because it is a position they use a lot. So let's look at the candidates. We have Nikola Zaluski. He was a likely candidate and was selected for the squad, but possible candidate Jakub Kaminski not selected there. On the right side, definite candidate Przemysław Frankowski was selected. And so was the possible but unlikely candidate, Michael Skóras. So a bit of a surprise there, but not completely, as he was possible. He had missed the last 6 matches there, Skóras, but brought into the final squad here. In the central attacking midfield position, we had a definite candidate in Sebastian Szymanski. And that is it for that category. So we move on to forwards, and here we have 2 definite candidates: Robert Lewandowski, selected of course, and Karol Swiderski also selected. 2 likely candidates here as well. The first was Arkadiusz Milik, and the veteran was selected for the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut there. A bit of a surprise. And the other one, Adam Buska, also selected, the likely candidate, Adam Buska. It seems like Krzysztof Piatek, the possible candidate, took Milik's spot there because he was selected. And there we have it, our 26 players for Poland and the 4 players cut from the preliminary squad. Let us take a look. Effectively 5 players cut from the preliminary squad, because we have Olivier Zich, the goalkeeper who led the preliminary squad and was replaced by another goalkeeper. Anyway, let's look at the selections here, notable non-selections. I would say Arkadiusz Milik is a notable non-selection. We had him as a likely candidate, and was kind of pipped by a player who was a possible candidate. So Milik not part of this cup. Sorry, I just need to find my spot in my script here. Okay, so Arkadiusz Milik, really the only notable non-selection there, but we do have a lot of surprise inclusions. One is Sebastian Walukiewicz, I'm sorry. He had been a possible but unlikely candidate, but was selected for the final squad. Also, Jakub Moder. In fact, all of these players had been possible but unlikely based on their participation since the beginning of 2023. Jakub Moder was out a lot through injury, so a bit less of a surprise there. And Michael Skóras, the right winger, also had been a possible but unlikely. So Walukiewicz, a central defender, central midfielder Jakub Moder, and right winger Michael Skóras. Somewhat surprising inclusions, but they had been possible. New players, well, we just have one new player making the squad. That's Kasper Urbanski, and we did introduce him. So the players not making the final squad, but named to the preliminary squad, Olivier Zich and Matus Kochalski, both of them goalkeepers, and Jacob Kaluzinski, a defensive midfielder. But again, the only one making it, central midfielder Kasper Urbanski. And I see why I didn't have Arkadiusz Milik in the notable non-selections category, because he is actually a player dropped due to injury here. So I don't know why I didn't write that in my notes alongside him, but he is tagged with an injury. It was a muscle problem picked up 5 minutes into the first warm-up game, and he was cut from the preliminary squad, but is obviously an injury absence rather than just not selected. So that kind of explains it. And really, he's the only injury for Poland. So we come to an abrupt finish here with Poland's squad, and so we hope that helps you appreciate Poland when they're on the field, and you know a little bit more about the players, and hope you enjoy the cup. We would like to thank Mike Tripak, Big Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s, accompanying this media cast.